Good afternoon and welcome to the TrinSoft GP Year-End Close webinar. My name is Bobby Haggard and I'm one of the consultants here at TrinSoft. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. I went ahead and put the phones on mute, try and cut down on some of the background noise. So if you have any questions, which we certainly encourage, please use the chat feature through the GoToMeeting function. My coworker, Tara Cox, will be helping me to watch the chats to help answer any questions. Additionally, at the end of the webinar, as time permits, I do plan to unmute the phones to allow anyone to ask questions if they'd like. And then if your question is specific to your close or your process, we'll certainly follow up later with a direct call. If you'd like a copy of these slides, my contact information will be shown at the end of the webinar. Just send me a quick request. I'll be happy to share those with you as well. Finally, you can always send us an email or give us a call, and we'll be happy to walk through and discuss your close-related questions as they come up. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our Dynamics GP year-end webinar. Our agenda for the webinar is fairly straightforward. We'll start by going over a few pre-close steps that we recommend. Next, we'll have a general overview of the GP close process. We'll discuss the order of operations and closing the various modules. I'll go over each module and discuss what the system will be doing when the close process is run, and a few key points and things to keep in mind. Finally, we should have some time for questions and answers at the end of the call. All right, now before the actual closing steps, there are a few pre-close steps and routines that we encourage clients to perform. First, make sure that all invoices, batches, adjustments, etc. related to the year that you are closing have been entered and posted. Next, make sure that you have performed a quick review of your account type setup to ensure that all balance sheet and profit and loss accounts are set up appropriately. We encourage you to run a smart list and quickly review the accounts to make sure that there aren't any accounts set up wrong. This is a very simple step that can save a lot of time in the long run, as the last thing you want to have happen is during the close of the year is to see what you thought was a balance sheet account that was netted to retained earnings, or to what you thought was a profit and loss account end up with a balance forward, all because it was set up wrong. Much easier to quickly double check this up front and then to try and reverse the year, update the wrong account, and then re-close. Now, another step that we encourage is to print or save some of your key reports, such as your detailed customer or vendor aging or various reconciliation type reports. These can act as a snapshot before the close process is performed. For some third-party products, they may require a service pack to be installed. So it's always a good idea to double check these and to know if this is applicable to your close process. Finally, we encourage clients to take a backup of the database. Once you have that backup, we encourage you to restore the backup into a test company and then run through the close in the test company to be sure that you are able to iron out any kinks or issues prior to the running of the close in the live company database. If you have any questions with this process or need help, please contact your TrinSoft consultant. We'll be happy to help with a backup and the restore process. All right, let's dig into the actual GP year-end close steps. Now, as you begin to close the year, it's important to note that the order of closing the various modules is important. Microsoft recommends the order as outlined here from top to bottom. First is payroll. Payroll is its own module and is independent of these other areas and is always done at the end of the calendar year. After payroll, we start with the closing of the inventory module, followed by receivables, payables, fixed assets, analytical accounting, and then finally, when all other modules are closed, we'll process the general ledger closing. It's important to note that analytical accounting is only a separate close if you're on an older version of GP. On the more current versions that include this version, analytical accounting is included in the general ledger close process. Now, a few things to keep in mind when looking at the various close steps and processes when they are usually located under the routines menu group in each functional area. If you need assistance with any of these steps, please let us know. Microsoft also has some good documentation on all of these processes within Customer Source. All right, let's go through each area quickly. First is payroll. As I mentioned previously, the payroll module is its own separate module, and the closing is performed separate as well. For clients running payroll, it's important that you first complete all payrolls for the current year. Once completed, you'll want to install the latest tax update. This is similar to applying a service pack update. Now, when you perform the close process in payroll, This will create a year-end file, which can be used to create the W-2s. These W-2 reports can then be processed manually or filed through GreenShades. We also encourage our clients to allow for extra time to test the first payroll of the new year thoroughly. Let's quickly talk about the W-2 process within GP. First, make sure that you have the latest payroll tax update running, in this instance for the 2018 calendar year. Next, you'll want to process all pay runs and be sure to post for the current year. The user will then want to complete all payroll-related procedures for the month-end, quarter-end, just as they normally would. Once completed with the final payroll, you will install the year-end update. The user will then create and verify the year-end file. Finally, the user can then install the payroll tax updates for the 2019 calendar year. The last step in this close is to close the fiscal periods for the payroll series. This will prevent any user from mistakenly posting to the wrong period or year. Inventory. Before closing the year for the inventory module, be sure that all inventory-related transactions have been posted. This would include invoicing, sales order processing, inventory transactions, such as cycle counts or physical count adjustments. Once these final transactions are posted, you're ready to perform the close routine for the inventory module. Now, when this routine runs, GP will close and then transfer all summarized current year quantity to the transaction history for items for which you have been keeping a summarized sales history. This quantity sold field for each item is reset to 0. The close process also updates the quantity in each item's beginning quantity field to the quantity on hand for each site. Finally, there's an option when performing the close to clean up discontinued items and lot attributes for items that have been completely sold out. There are various check boxes that the user has the option to enable or not prior to running the close process. It's important for the user to note that there is not a year-end close report related to inventory. In this module, when the inventory close process is complete, it is just finished. So if there's any specific inventory-related reports, you want to be sure that those are saved. It's important to run those ahead of the close process. Now, as with the payroll module and the other areas, the last optional step is to close the fiscal periods for this specific module. This, again, will prevent users from mistakenly posting to the wrong period or year. Now, receivables module. Before performing this close process, just like the other areas, it's important to be sure that all sales and receivable batches for the current year have been posted. Once all current year activity and transactions are posted, we recommend that you run your customer trial balance and reconcile to the GL. Once that's complete, the user is now ready to process the year-end routine. When the routine runs, the system will clear the calendar year-to-date finance charges, along with several other year-to-date or current year fields, and move them to the last year calendar field for the respective area. It's important to note that there are some smart list objects and summary reports that have some date sensitivity that you may need some closer review as well. Finally, just like in the previous steps, the final step would be to close the fiscal periods so that users can't post any receivable-related activity into the wrong period. You'll see that the payables close steps are very similar. Before performing the close process for payables area, once again, it's important to be sure that all sales and receivable batches for the current year are posted. Once all current year activity and transactions are posted, we recommend that you run your vendor trial balance and reconcile to the GL. The user is now ready to process the year-end routine. When the routines run, the system will clear the calendar year-to-date finance charge along with several other year-to-date or current year fields and move them to the last year calendar fields in the respective area. Now, it's important to note that there are some smart list objects and summary reports that will need to be monitored as well in the payables area. Let's quickly cover 1099 reporting. First, it's important to note that the 1099 process is not connected to the year-end close process. So you can complete your year-end close and then come back at a later date or time to work on 1099s. It is important to know that 1099s can be printed manually through GP or through the GreenShades third-party software. Within GP, it's important to make sure that the vendor is set up correctly from the start. The user does have the ability to manually edit 1099 amounts once started. However, we do encourage the user to set up the vendor correctly initially and then let the system work as designed. The print option for 1099 is under the routine section of the payables area. The fixed assets module should not be closed until the payables module has been fully closed first. If you have multiple fixed asset books, you can close them each separately However, each must be closed prior to closing the general ledger. Prior to closing the fixed assets module, be sure to post any additions, charges, transfers, retirements, and be sure all depreciation for the current year has been completely posted. The fixed assets close routine will clear year-to-date fields in the current year. Costs and life-to-date depreciation will be updated. This would include reserves, salvage values, etc. Finally, the current fiscal year is updated to the next year. A key aspect to know about the fixed asset module is that it's important to run the year-end reports and reconcile reports prior to closing the module. As I mentioned earlier, with newer versions of GP, the Analytical Accounting module is included in the General Ledger close, so there's not any specific close steps for Analytical Accounting. If this is the first time you're closing Analytical Accounting on the newer version, then GP will prompt you to move some data to history before the system will allow you to close the year. We encourage you to review the setup of the Analytical Accounting options window prior to closing the first time. If you use Analytical Accounting and there are any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions or concerns in that area. All right, the General Ledger closing should be performed only after all other modules have been closed. As I mentioned earlier, this is your last chance to double check your account type setup is correct. Again, it's so much easier to make these corrections on the front end than on the back end. Another key step prior to running the close routine is to double check the GL setup and ensure that the proper account is selected for your retained earnings account. When the GL is closed, all profit and loss accounts are rolled into retained earnings, and all balance sheet accounts are rolled into the beginning balance for that account. Inactive accounts with no balance and no historical transactions can be removed. And then finally, the year that has just been closed is marked as historical, and the fiscal periods tables are updated, marking the year as historical. Once the close process is run, be sure to save the year-end close reports as needed. In the unfortunate event that something does go wrong during the close, there are a couple options. First, there is a reverse year-end close option that will reverse the latest close that was performed. The second option would be to load the backup that was taken of the database just prior to performing the close process. Though this issue likelihood is rare, it's good to know that there's options available to fix any of these problems. Finally, as I mentioned in other areas, it's key to close the fiscal period to ensure that transactions are not posted to a prior period. All right, if you have any general questions or if anything was unclear from the webinar, I'll unmute the phones in just a moment and give anyone the opportunity to ask questions that they may have. Also, if you want to enter in questions through the GoToMeeting chat feature, please do so at this time, and we will try to address those as needed. Finally, if you have any specific questions or concerns, I'll list my email and phone number on the next slide. Please feel free to email us or call us, and we'll be happy to address those as well. Thanks for taking the time to join our GP year-end close webinar. Let us know if you have any questions, and best of luck with closing the year. Thanks again, and have a great day.